Futurist. Tonight, we take you somewhere cold, quiet, and nearly forgotten. A place buried not by time, but by the stillness of its resistance. You won't find it on a map. It doesn't appear in satellite indexing or on digital curriculum charts. But it exists, carved into the edge of a snow-draped forest, beneath pale skies untouched by drone traffic or algorithmic signals. In the year 2099, learning looks nothing like today. Education is streamed, optimized, seamlessly integrated into children's neural environments. Knowledge is absorbed, not studied. There are no classrooms, no teachers, no bells, no chalk. In most of the world, school as we knew it no longer exists. But in one hidden corner of Finland, a different kind of future quietly persists. This is the story of the last physical school on Earth, a place where students still read books made of paper, sharpen pencils by hand, and walk down real hallways lined with windows that actually open. It is not a relic. It is not nostalgic. It is something else entirely. Deliberate, rooted, resistant. Tonight, we'll step into that school, not through screens or smart glasses, but gently. One page, one footstep, one whispered conversation at a time. We'll meet the headmistress who made it possible, explore the mystery locked in the school's oldest archives, and finally travel far away to witness what education looks like when it loses all friction and all form. So breathe slowly, let your thoughts unwind, and let's begin. Not in the future we're racing toward, but in the one quietly waiting behind it. The room is cold, not uncomfortable, but real. The kind of cold that rests gently on your skin, reminding you that the air is moving, that you're alive. You wake to the quiet rattle of wind through pine branches just outside your window, the soft creak of old wooden beams contracting in the morning chill. Your bed is firm, simple, wool blankets, no synthetic fabric, no warming gel mattress. You stretch, muscles slowly responding, and sit up to see your breath float in the dim amber light filtering through the frosted window pane. The sun is low, more suggestion than radiance, but it's enough to stir the day. The school building is a modest collection of stone and timber, nestled in a snowy clearing, far from any city grid. There are no satellites above, no constant data syncs. Your schedule is handwritten on a paper slip beside your bed. You trace it with your finger. Breakfast, reading, group discussion, handcraft hour, solitude walk. Everything here has weight, texture. You dress slowly, pulling on layered wool garments, still faintly scented with pine smoke from the fireplace in the central hall. There's no screen to check, no neural assistant waiting for your input. The world is silent, intact, waiting. You pad down the hallway in thick socks, the wooden floor cool beneath your feet. The walls are lined with books, actual books, with cracked spines and folded corners and margin notes in dozens of different hands, some written decades ago, some yesterday. In the dining room, a long table sits ready, set with mismatched ceramic bowls and thick-handled mugs. The scent of hot barley and dried fruit tea fills the room. No voice commands, no delivery bots, just warmth and quiet company. You eat slowly, and when you finish, you help wash your own bowl in a sink with running water that must be conserved. Everything is intentional here, every task a choice. After breakfast, you carry your books down the stone hallway into a room lit only by window light. It's cold again. You sit at a wooden desk, its surface scratched and ink-stained from years of use. Your teacher is already there, not a hologram, slides, just words and your imagination. You follow the story line by line. Your breath slows. The room is still. Outside, snow begins to fall. This is how the day begins in the last school on Earth, not with noise or optimization, but with presence, with the weight of books, the sound of snow, the warmth of tea, and the knowledge that here, learning still happens in silence. But this place would not exist if not for one person, a woman who chose to preserve what the world had already buried, a woman whose resistance to digital immersion wasn't rebellion, but devotion. Let's step into her story next. Her name is Yelena Martikainen, though most just call her Headmistress. She prefers that. It's not out of pride, but out of care. She believes titles carry weight, not status, but structure. And in a world where structure has melted into streaming consciousness and disembodied learning networks, that weight matters. Yelena was born in 2045 in what used to be the city of Tampere. She grew up like most children of her generation, learning through immersive neurosim environments, absorbing history by being historical figures in dream mode simulations, understanding physics through artificially induced kinesthetic feedback. By the time she was 10, she had never held a book, never sat at a desk, never once been bored in class. But something in her was restless. She didn't dislike technology. She was good at it. She could recode dream prompts before she could tie her shoes. But even as a child, she sensed something had been lost. She couldn't name it then. Only later, as she began her graduate work in cognitive education theory, would the idea find language. It came during a research trip to the old Finnish archives, one of the few still housing physical texts. There, buried under decades of dust and data conversion logs, she found a paper journal from 2023. It belonged to a rural teacher named Aino. The journal didn't contain answers. It contained questions about how to teach empathy, how to help children sit with discomfort, how to let silence be part of learning. That journal changed her life. While the world chased seamlessness and acceleration, Yelena began to walk the other way. Quietly, slowly, and without fanfare, she began restoring an abandoned boarding school deep in the forest. At first, it was only meant as a retreat, a temporary place for students to disconnect. But within 2 years, it became more than that. It became a statement. Yelena rewired nothing. She installed no AI. She barred all atmospheric Wi-Fi penetration. And she created something unthinkable in 2070. A full curriculum delivered entirely offline. Reading from physical texts, writing with graphite, measuring distance with string and shadow, memory, not metadata. Her proposal for recognition was denied by the Global Learning Alliance. Philosophically admirable, the review board said, but not scalable. She didn't argue. She didn't reply. Instead, she kept teaching. The school officially opened its doors in 2073 with 7 students. All were children of researchers, diplomats, or displaced settlers. All had spent their early years under neural acceleration, and all arrived at the school deeply anxious, disoriented by the slow pace, the quiet meals, the absence of guidance overlays. But over time, something shifted. The students began to sleep longer, their attention spans stretched. One student, who had never written more than 2 sentences without audio assistance, wrote an 80-page story about a woman who spoke to glaciers. Another built a telescope from spare lenses and wood, and charted stars that had no tag in the city sky. Word spread. Slowly, privately, By 2080, the school had become known, not publicly, but among those who had quietly grown weary of frictionless learning. Yelena refused expansion. She accepted no more than 24 students a year, each selected by letter, handwritten, hand-delivered, and always returned with a reply, even if declined. She was never romantic about it. She didn't believe the old ways were better, only that something human required slowness, stillness, effort. Now, in 2099, she is 54. Her hair is silver at the temples, and her voice, though soft, has the quality of a stone worn smooth by time. She teaches history and poetry. She tends to the fire in the central room each morning before breakfast. She listens to the snow. In the evenings, she writes by candlelight. Her latest journal is filled with questions no AI could answer. What happens to imagination that is never slowed down? What does a memory weigh when it is never written by hand? Can we remember who we are if we are never allowed to be bored? Her school is not a sanctuary, nor a rebellion. It is a mirror, a still pool in a world rushing past itself. And while she's still here, it will stay that way. But there is more to the school than even she knows. In the far wing of the oldest building, behind a sealed door and stacks of long unopened boxes, lies something that doesn't appear on the school's manifest. A forgotten archive, one that contains patterns and something deeply strange. Let's explore it next. At the far edge of the school grounds, past the last visible lamplight, there's a building that no one enters casually. The walls are thicker here, stone and iron reinforced decades before the rest of the school was restored. Most students simply refer to it as the old wing. Even in daylight, it carries a hush. Yelena doesn't speak of it often. She says it was once the school's observatory and records room, but that much of the equipment was damaged during the 2042 magnetic storms. It's cold there, dim, and filled with things that no longer serve their purpose, or so it seems. But one morning, a student named Mika, a quiet girl with a habit of asking questions others were afraid to, was helping carry firewood through the corridor when she noticed something strange. A draft coming from behind a heavy wooden cabinet. It wasn't loud, just a suggestion of movement, a breath of air in a school that was normally sealed against winter. With quiet persistence and the cautious help of two others, she moved the cabinet aside. Behind it, a locked door, long forgotten. The lock, mechanical. The key, still in the drawer where Yelena had left it years before, thinking it didn't open anything. Inside the room was not ruin, but silence. Undisturbed silence. The walls were lined with boxes, old archive storage, paper files, bound folders, spools of analog magnetic tape, even crystalline memory rods from the early 2030s. And in the centre, a low wooden table with what appeared to be an antique reading station. Non-electric, hand-lensed, lighted by oil lamp. The files were labelled in handwritten script, nothing digital. Some names meant nothing. Project Myrrh, Epoch Garden, Echo Reading Trials, Session 3. Others, eerily familiar. Imaginal Index, Narrative Deviation Protocol, Predictive Metaphor Logs. At first, it seemed like a forgotten research archive, perhaps a university offshoot or an experimental psychology project. But as Mika and the others explored deeper, always with permission from Yelena, who was both unsettled and intrigued, they found something stranger. Each file contained dreams, thousands of them, described in longhand, not clinical entries, not sleep study notes, but complete dreams, told like stories, annotated by timestamp, lunar phase, temperature, and in many cases matched with real-world events. of waves before tsunamis, dreams of birds migrating out of season, days before satellites confirmed it, dreams of symbols, melted clocks, spiralling tunnels, burning snow, many of which had become common in modern dream archives after the rise of Neurobloom. But these were dated before, decades before. One box marked "The Listening Logs" contained dozens of identical dreams written by different hands, each describing the same moment: a classroom bathed in blue light, a woman reciting a poem no one could remember afterward, and the sound of wind turning pages on its own. There was no record of these students, no network to trace, yet the dreams were preserved, carefully, gently, across years. The implication, though no one said it aloud, was impossible to ignore. This school had once been part of a dream study program, one so early, so secretive, and so profoundly human-centered, it left no digital footprint. Perhaps it was abandoned, perhaps it was buried, or perhaps it simply faded when the world stopped believing in slow things. Yelena read every file, for days, in silence. At night she lit the reading lamp and let herself be immersed. Some dreams made her cry, others filled her with a quiet sense of déjà vu. Many were incomplete, stories that ended mid-sentence, questions left unanswered. But she recognised the tone, she recognised the space between the lines. These were not dreams generated for productivity, not shaped by anchor prompts or subconscious incentive scripts. They were raw, meandering, imperfect, true. And she realised something then, something she later shared only with her most trusted students. This school hadn't just survived, it had dreamed the future before it arrived, not with precision, not with metrics, but with the same intuition her students now carry with them as they read by the fire, write stories by hand, or look up at the stars without augmented overlays. The archive is still there, not public, not yet digitised, but protected now in Yelena's care. Its contents slowly being copied, annotated, passed down, not as evidence, not as warning, but as memory. Because sometimes the past dreams more clearly than the present, and not all futures are designed. Some are whispered in silence, between breaths, between pages, but far away, on the opposite edge of civilization, a different form of learning continues. Faster, frictionless, fluent in light, not silence. Let's go there next. If the Finnish forest school is a whisper, then the orbital learning habitat on Callisto is a beam of pure, unbroken signal. It doesn't creak, it doesn't breathe, it shines. Hovering in low orbit around Jupiter's second largest moon, the Callisto academic ring, also known as Car 9, was constructed in 2082 as a flagship of the Interplanetary Knowledge Exchange Initiative. Its purpose is to educate children of the interplanetary elite, station-born offspring of engineers, climate evacuees, tech aristocracy, and select high-index citizens. These children will not touch books, they will not memorise dates, they will never, in the strictest sense, study. Instead, education is absorbed. When you wake up in Car 9, you're already learning. The moment your vitals shift out of dream state, your cortex syncs with the habitat's distributed knowledge lattice. You're not briefed, you're updated. Lessons are not delivered, they are installed. You don't ask questions, you receive anticipatory comprehension packets, designed to pre-answer what your future curiosity might want to know. Classrooms don't exist here. Instead, students float in low-gravity pods, nourished intravenously with customised nootropic slurries. Facial movement is minimal. Speech is rare. Eyelids flutter only when knowledge integration is stabilizer is administered. You do not resist learning. Your body wants to understand, and it does. By the time students are 12, they've absorbed the equivalent of 4 doctoral level disciplines: language, systems, biology, post-quantum logic, planetary ethics. By 16, they can rewrite a synthetic genome while holding a silent conversation in machine-corrected Sanskrit. Their minds are fluent, flawless, fast, but something is missing. The children rarely laugh, they rarely cry, they do not write, they do not doodle. Their dreams are shallow, interrupted by silent downloads of reference material. Most cannot recall a single personal memory from before the age of 5. They describe childhood as smooth, efficient, without error. And yet, error is how humans used to learn. The instructors, if they can be called that, are cognitive architects. They don't teach, they tune. Their job is not to inspire, but to maintain throughput. One of them, a quiet technician named Eli Sarno, began keeping a secret file. Recordings of unplanned gestures, a blink that lingered, a hand twitch during rest mode, a child whispering a word under their breath that wasn't in the lexicon. He noticed a pattern. These glitches occurred more frequently after periods of silence, rare, unstructured moments when the system fell offline for repairs. During one such blackout, a student named Shira murmured the words, "I remember trees." She had never seen trees. She had been born in orbit. These slips were small, insignificant to the system, but to Eli, they felt like echoes, memories surfacing from somewhere not in the databanks. He began to wonder what learning felt like before it was perfected. Was there room for slowness, for failure, for wonder? Was knowledge once something that unfolded rather than arrived? Eli began storing unstructured recordings in an encrypted cache. Stories, laughter, a hand drawing circles in condensation on the inside of a pod window. These were not errors. These were reminders, and eventually he did the unthinkable. He printed out one of the recordings. Yes, printed, and placed it on a strip of analog paper, left anonymously inside the chamber of a student marked underperforming. Just a single sentence. Learning isn't remembering, it's becoming. There was no response, no recorded change in metrics. But a week later, that student blinked during upload. Once, deliberately, and then again. Small, slow, human. You leave car 9 with a sense of awe, but also of ache. Everything is beautiful, clean, precise, yet none of it lingers. Nothing sticks to you. Not the way the scent of tea does in that quiet forest school. Not the sound of snow. Back on Earth, the last school still stands. Still cold, still imperfect. But inside its wooden walls are questions no data packet can hold. And maybe that's the point. Let's return now, one last time, to reflect on what we've seen and what we choose to carry forward. And now we return, slowly, softly, from the filtered white light of car 9, from children who learn without effort, from lessons without questions, and from dreams that leave no residue. We drift back to the quiet school in the forest, where the air still smells of pine, and pencils are still carved by hand. A place where a child may sit for 20 minutes before writing a single sentence, and that sentence will be theirs. Not downloaded, not streamed, not optimized, simply discovered. Tonight we travelled across 2 futures, both real, one polished, precise, gleaming in orbit, where information is absorbed like breath. The other fragile, flickering in the snow, where knowledge is earned in silence, and between them a third space, the archive that dreamed first, the secret memory sealed behind a cabinet, written in the curved lines of ink on paper, a record of the subconscious before we tried to streamline it. We saw what happens when education becomes weightless, when every lesson is perfect and no time is wasted. We felt the pull of efficiency, its beauty, its seduction, and we saw what might be lost in that smoothness, the stumbles, the questions, the room for a child to wonder, not just learn. Headmistress Yelena didn't save the past. She kept space for a different rhythm, and in doing so, she preserved something deeper than knowledge. She preserved meaning. You may not remember every dream you've had. You may not remember every class you took, but somewhere in you there are fragments, phrases, textures, moments of friction that shaped how you move through the world. That's not data, that's memory. And memory, unlike information, has weight. As you settle now into your own quiet space, wherever you are, let your breath slow, let your thoughts soften. You do not need to download more. You are already full of lived experience, and the most human form of learning is not to know, but to remember. This has been Midnight Futurist. Until next time, rest well, drift forward, and keep a little space inside you for the slow kind of knowledge, the kind that takes root in the dark and blooms quietly, like learning